Okay.
You want to bring that closer? Or?
I suppose. You'll have to do some editing. Or I can just restart it. Okay.
I'm eating.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're good. We're not professional YouTubers yet.
Nope.
All right. Let's make sure I'm recording. Okay. So what is this, episode 5?
5 or 6 or 7, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Welcome to the couch.
Welcome to the couch.
Today's topic was something you had, the Omega Rule, and something else.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty,
And
that's a good
the
one.
Omega Rule, and maybe tied into that is how collectively women don't feel heard collectively by men.
Yeah. So the setup on that last one, you made the point that when men and women are talking, or people in a relationship, the masculine tends to try to solve the problem being proposed by the feminine.
Yeah.
Right? Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's at least part of it.
Sure. And then what happens is there's a lack of communication there. So you tell me about something at work. I want to come up with a bunch of suggestions about how you can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't hear what you're trying to express.
Yeah.
And so you and kind of the representative of women in general kind of feel unheard.
Correct.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
cool.
But even when it's maybe trying to talk about bigger issues, like we were having a conversation last night about this Game B space. And my perception of the conversation was that there was, you going into that very matter of fact, it's black or white, this is right, this is wrong. Where I was sort of in a more open, flowy, multicolored something or other, trying to figure out, trying to say, okay, here's some information that I have
You're trying
acquired.
To noodle out reality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I didn't set the stage for that very well. Maybe I needed to say, are you up for noodling out reality?
Sure. And then the Rule Omega came up.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go through that?
Uh-huh.
So I think that kind of dovetails into it.
So Rule Omega is essentially give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Give everyone the benefit of the doubt that there is at least something in what they're saying that has some truth in it. It might be 99% noise and only 1% truth, but assume that there is at least some small percentage of truth in what they're saying. And you might have to filter out the noise.
Well, is it truth or is it signal?
Signal. That's right. Yeah. Good distinction.
So this makes any person talking to any other person more difficult because right off the bat, you kind of made the assumption like it's 99% noise.
No, I'm not making that.
Well, no, but like that, it's very likely that that's actually the case. And so when you're talking to somebody, the work is to determine what that 1% is.
Is that closed?
I don't know. Okay, great.
Keep talking.
So if you're talking to somebody and what they're saying is 99% noise, you have a lot of work to do to figure out what that 1% actually is. So if she's telling me about this Game B stuff with no context or frame or anything, and then it's like, okay, now I have to sit here and try to figure out what the 1% is. What is the 1% that I'm supposed to hear? And then filter that out. I don't know. It's just a lot of work. But the Rule Omega is always assume that at least 1% exists.
Yeah, something like that.
No.
And
so I like the back and forth that they described. We were watching this video.
We'll put a link to it in the description.
Jordan Hall and some other people says, okay, if let's say she's telling me something and I pick out, let's say the 3% that's actual signal from the noise, and I say something back to her, and then what I say back to her, maybe she has to do the same filtering to find, the 3% that's signal. And so if you look at that, it's like 3% plus 3%. Now we have 6% signal, right? And it just keeps adding up every time you do it. You just get more and more signal and like more fidelity on what the message actually is. I think we do this a lot. You'll say something that makes absolutely no fucking sense at all. It'll be just completely like in the middle of a thought, and then I'll have to do a bunch of work and ask some questions. And then it's like, oh, okay, she actually meant this thing over here that has absolutely nothing to do with what she just said.
I think that is more common than in terms of how women think.
Well, which is more common? Like the fact that I did that, or that you were in the middle of a thought or gave a fragmented idea or something, or like, which is more common?
I think it's that I gave that I gave a fragmented idea. It's a generalization. I'll preface it with saying it's a generalization, but I think it is more accurate to say that women have a tendency to come in the middle of things. There's a reason that I have 50 tabs open on my browser, and that I have a laptop that's only at 24% battery. And, it's like I have things going in 12 different directions. And I don't always know how to backtrack and present the information that I want to share in a fully formed, like, closed packet to pass to you.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something to, like what Jordan talks about, like your sense-making apparatus is fragmented.
Possible. Well,
because I don't do the same thing. Like two different people, right? I don't make sense of the world by trying to find 50 different opinions.
It's interesting.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate, but like you seem to want to get a lot of information before trying to make sense of something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And you have a lot of information coming in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like you do a good job of making sense of anything. Which is why I think your sense-making apparatus is more efficient when it's done person to person. Right? It's very fragmented when it's done through browser tabs. You're getting a lot of bad information.
Yeah.
Conflicting information. Not even bad information, just conflicting information.
There's a friend that I have that she and I will have long conversations, and she's like, I can see when you're going in circles, and then I can see when a piece of information will pop up and go, oh yeah, that's what we're trying to get to. Because it takes sometimes me talking in circles for a while to figure out what is it that I'm trying to.
That's your sense-making apparatus.
Yeah.
That's how you make sense of the world. Yeah.
And it's, I will say, horribly inefficient in some senses. And
well, complex things might look horribly inefficient too.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just complex.
I appreciate that distinction, because I noticed that, like, in this conversation, I'm judging myself as like, I'm not doing it right, but it is how I do it. That is, my way of making sense of the world.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you could make the argument that if your communication contains mostly noise and it takes as much work as it does to get the signal out, then it's just going to be difficult to communicate, and it's going to require someone on the other end who's willing to do the work to find the signal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's not a judgment of you or your methodology. That's just an observation.
Yeah.
I would, not to keep interrupting you, but I would imagine that the same is true for me, although I don't communicate as much. I bet there's a different kind of work that you have to do with me because I appear to be threatening.
Yeah.
So with women, when I'm talking, I'd imagine that the person I'm talking to has to do a lot of work to filter out the noise that I'm presenting with being 6'2", being a large, scary guy, right? They have to do a lot of work to kind of filter that out and not let that bias come out.
Yeah. That's actually I really appreciate that. And I don't know that I could have articulated that in that way.
Yeah, it's like different kinds of noise.
Yeah.
Right.
There is a lot of noise that comes from you that is more your
body language.
Yeah, your body language, your tone,
yeah.
the way that you present that, it creates, whether it's...
For those who don't know me, I don't suffer idiots well.
No.
And so if you say something stupid and I know it's stupid, and I say, that's a stupid fucking thing you just said, I'm effectively creating a tremendous amount of noise in my communication. And there's like barely any signal there. You have to work really hard to find it.
Yeah.
And the signal would be, I'm trying to communicate that idea is like littering. It's like throwing a cigarette butt on the ground. Like you just did something bad.
Yeah.
And I don't appreciate you littering the space with that kind of stupidity.
It's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I like the way you described that because I had the experience in our conversation last night. I spent a long time talking to my friend Sharon, or not, I spent a little while talking to my friend Sharon because I was really upset. Talking to my friend. I was talking to my friend because I was really, I was angry last night after our conversation.
After ours?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was angry about our conversation. And luckily I went to some place where I was able to, kind of filter through some of the noise that came from it. But there was what I received on the other end was you have nothing important to say.
Yeah.
And
it was kind of like the littering thing, wasn't it?
In a sense, yeah. And I think this morning we've made more progress on, and me communicating in one of the ways that I know how, which is showing you videos. That is one of the ways that I communicate with him, is I find someone who says what I'm trying to say in a way that is better than I can say it, and I share that with him.
You're talking about the Jordan Hall video we're looking at now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I think we've been able to get more into the conversation about the Game B space. But yeah, I absolutely appreciate that, there is a tremendous amount of noise that comes from you that is maybe largely due to my cultural conditioning as a woman to feel threatened by, your demeanor, your body language, all of that. And then there's an incredible amount of noise going the other direction because I can't get straight to the point. I have a difficult time getting straight to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When I'm talking
it seems like you haven't made sense of these things yet.
Right. And it takes me, I think women have a tendency to need to talk about things to make sense of them.
Sure. I think we all do. I think that's what language is.
Yeah.
And that's what Jordan Peterson talks about a lot.
And so, when I'm talking to my girlfriends, I'm like, I don't know. I'll say, I don't know where this is going, but I think it'll circle back around. And it almost always inevitably does. But I have to tell a circuitous story to get to what it is that I'm trying to say, because my mind, it's like something will come up and there'll be this little thread that'll peel off. And I'm like, okay, I have to follow this to get back to, because I have to tell this side story in order to get back to my point. And when I'm doing it with women, it makes sense. Like we're able to follow each other. We're able to track that. But when I'm doing it with you, you're like, what's the fucking point? You know, you will get to the place of what's the fucking point?
Right.
And the hard part for me has been that we're talking about really.
You don't do a very good job of telling stories either. I think storytelling is when you fully mastered and understood and grokked an idea, you can translate it into your own kind of verbiage. And so it seems like you just haven't quite gotten to that point where you fully understand the idea and then you can tell a story about it.
I don't know. I don't know I don't know if that's accurate or not. I think, like I said, when I'm talking to my girlfriends or when I'm talking to other women, I'm able to talk. We understand each other. We're able to follow those side paths. And it sounds like a more coherent story than it does when I'm telling you, because I'm trying to, I think what happens is I try and get to the point really quick, but I don't know, I haven't figured out how to fully incorporate this side story that I need to tell that will help tell a story.
Yeah. It sounds like you're just telling the story about storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I appreciate, that I really like that Rule Omega and the conversation about sovereignty. You know, I know that I often am not dependent, but often look for other people to confirm what I'm thinking, and have a difficult time standing in this is my reality. Doesn't mean it's the truth, but this is my standing in this is my perception of reality. And I think when people say, I think when women say, this is my truth, they're saying, I am standing in, this is my perception of reality.
Yeah, I wish they'd say that.
I think that's, yeah.
I think that makes more sense.
It does. But I think
standing your truth, like, what the fuck does that mean?
Right.
Standing it, this is the lens by which I see the world, or this is the perspective based on the information that I have and the way I process the world. Like, all of those seem to make more sense.
I think one of the reasons that women say that is because there has been a large amount of questioning our perceptions that we'll share.
What's wrong with that?
Or not questioning, making wrong our perception.
Well, okay. I still think that's a matter of perspective, but.
And again, that might be some women's lack of nuance of being able to filter out the noise.
Sure. So when a woman says this, like blah, whatever, and a man says, well, what the fuck do you mean? Blah is not that way. It's yada. Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we do to each other.
Right. And that's not what we do to each other.
Well, okay,
and so,
fine. But like, I think back to the Omega rule, what we're kind of describing here is that when a man does that, he's not searching for the signal. He's just looking at the noise and trying to figure out what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
And the question is, how do you, it's like going back to if a woman is scared, how does she respond? If the large amount of the noise is she's being emotionally activated into a fear response, figuring out how to respond effectively.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, you have a person who is afraid of people responding to her, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that kind of comes into the sovereignty thing. It's like, at some point, you do kind of have to bring in personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. And I know this is a tough one, but like, your choice to shut down or leave or fly or whatever, like that's still your choice.
But is it when you're dealing with trauma?
Yeah. I also think it's your responsibility to deal with the trauma.
And I agree with that.
That comes before the I guess the fear-induced panic or whatever.
Right. And there are not, one of the things I was talking to a friend yesterday about is one of the things that I would really like is a container in which the masculine is able to, where someone representing the masculine comes at me with, well, that's a fucking stupid idea. And me stammering through for maybe an hour, stammering through whatever it is I need to stammer through to come back and bawl my eyes out and cry to work through that trauma.
Isn't that basically our marriage?
Yeah, not so much.
Some parts of it.
Some parts of it, yes. But
okay, so you're talking like an emotional dojo.
Yes,
yeah.
An emotional dojo is exactly what, that would be an amazing thing for me. To have that, because thank you, Lacey.
Hey.
Thank you.
He's saying hi to the neighbor.
Yeah. That would be an amazing thing, I think, for a lot of women to be able to get to that point where they could stand there on their own 2 feet and be sovereign in a conversation with a man of your stature and your demeanor coming at them and being able to say, well, that's stupid, and being able to, come back from it.
All I say is, you're a fucking idiot, and just take a seat.
Right.
Just wait.
And I feel like I make little increments on getting to that place.
So what do you think that would do then? So I say that, you stammer through something for an hour, and then what happens? Like, what does that do?
It remaps the neural pathway in my brain to be able to, okay, I can do this. And so then maybe the next time I do it, it takes 45 minutes and then 30 minutes and then 15 until I get down to, okay, it only takes me, 30 seconds to recover from that experience.
Sure. And that doesn't play out as it is right now?
No.
Okay. Why not? What's the difference?
I think sometimes my stammering through, you get frustrated, you get impatient. That adds to the emotional stuff that I'm experiencing. So, like in my ideal world, I'm thinking of
those like training reps.
Yeah, it's like I need to do 1,000 reps of this, and I don't think you have the time, patience, or inclination to want to sit there for 1,000 reps. Not saying that not as a criticism, just.
Is that a judgment of my time management?
No.
Sounded like it.
There's no judgment of that. No. It's.
Have you asked me if I'm willing to do 1,000 reps with you? I don't remember having that conversation.
I think I've tried to explain this before, and we didn't have quite enough language yet.
Oh, okay.
So I think this might be the first time that I've done that.
Mm.
So, like.
I know this has worked better with other people too.
Yeah.
So other men doing the same thing.
Yeah. And that's, hence all of the, healing stuff I do, trying to find containers that can help me move through the trauma that I'm trying to move through.
Yeah, must be a lot of trauma. You go through a lot of containers.
I don't know if it's a lot of trauma, but it's not easy to find the right container. And so you got to, it's like, try this, fail, try this, fail, try this, fail.
And at some point you're going to find the thing that works.
That's the goal.
That's always my thing, is like,
I'm getting better and better at being able, sorry for the interruption, but I think I'm getting better and better at being able to articulate what it is that I need. So how can you know, how can you heal something if it's like, I don't know what it is that I need to do, but I'm getting better and better at being able to articulate that.
Okay. I think some people are just destined to always be in containers. It's like some people are just destined to always be in school, right? Always learning, right? But it's rare that they actually do something, right? So it's just a constant, never-ending, lifelong journey of learning.
Is there something wrong with that?
No, I mean, some people are just destined for that, right? They never really do anything with any of the information, but they have a lot of it.
I hear a lot of judgment in that.
Yeah, I mean, I consider people like that to be useless because they don't do anything practical. They don't even teach. Like, they just constantly go to school or classes or whatever, and like, it's like at some point they'll have the thing that they think they need to go into the world and do something. And I see that kind of with the stuff that you do as well.
Okay.
And it's like, it's never like I don't believe that you're ever going to find the point at which, okay, now I'm done. Now I've done the thing.
Life is a journey.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
it seems like your journey is just containers.
And it sounds like there's a judgment of that being the wrong way to live.
Well, I think to some degree it is.
But that's you imposing your morality and your moral framework on me.
I didn't say it was about you. But I guess you can make that determination. But I like a lot of what Jordan Peterson says.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do have to take responsibility for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen you constantly trying to accomplish is this goal. Like, at some point, AA is going to give you a graduation cap and you're done, right? You're done being an alcoholic. Congratulations, you graduated. Or, any of the other things that you do, like ELA or whatever, it's going to be like, someday somebody's going to hand you a cap and there, you're done. You're happy. You can move on. You're going to fix the trauma.
It's really funny that you say it's interesting that you say that, because I was having a conversation with somebody who I'm helping mentor, and I said in one of the various programs that I do, and one of the things I said to her was, there is no graduation. This is a process. This is a journey. You're never gonna reach the end. So you don't have to. I think when I first started AA and first started recovery, I was, go, 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 go. I have to figure out how to graduate. And over time, that has slowly become, okay, this is this is just a part of my life. It is a part of my journey. And I just happen to not have particularly good memory, so I have to repeat things over and over and over again. I have a really bad memory, so I have to hear the same things over and over again until I actually embody them. And so I think that's, I received your message with there was a lot of noise to filter out. And I think, but what I hear is maybe that what you would, and this is me trying, so please bear with me, you may be wanting me to see things more as a journey and not a destination.
No. I really like what they did with the Hulk in the Avengers series, right? When they were fighting in New York, they asked Bruce Banner something, and he says, well, that's the thing, I'm always angry. And then he turns into the Hulk and beats up the bad guys. Remember that? Yeah. You probably don't remember it as vividly as I do, right? But the Hulk, the idea of the Hulk, or even Jekyll and Hyde, that has always been a part of my life. This idea that we are both natures all the time. We always have a deep, dark hole that we're always trying to fill with our bad behavior. Mm-hmm. And when we've had this conversation in the past, you immediately throw the biggest goddamn fit. In the past, I'm saying in the past. I think it was an incredibly uncomfortable idea for you to think that you had any bad in you. Yeah. Because you were supposed to be something else. Yeah. You were supposed to be the Bruce Banner, the good kid, whatever. And anytime I suggested that we are both our best and worst natures simultaneously all the time, we have this black hole. We have evil inside of us. And it's shadow. Sure. Where, back then, it was just a black hole, right? Yeah. We always try to fill this with bullshit. And that's kind of what gets us into trouble in life. And then you would have this visceral, a physical reaction to that idea. Like, no, that cannot be reality. That cannot be the case, right? You cannot be bad. You are Kira. You are good, right? It was always that sense. And so I've always carried this idea of there's always evil in me. There's always bad. There's always shadow. That's always been there. My job isn't to avoid it at all. It's never going to be avoided. If you avoid it, you're fucked. It's to integrate it.
Yeah.
Right? And so in the last Avengers movie, spoiler alert, Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk. Right? He's integrated those two things. And I think that's the journey. That's the work. Mm-hmm. That's the container. Every single moment of every day, that's what we're trying to do is integrate things. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. I think the healthiest people I've ever met are the people who absolutely do not deny their evil side. Right. Right? And so every time we have conversations like this, the thing that I hear, maybe this is the noise, is that at some point, your bad is going to go away. And that's what all of this is for.
No, I don't think that my bad is going to go away.
Okay. I assume that all of these things that you do is some attempt to solve the trauma.
No, it is an attempt to integrate the trauma.
Okay. That doesn't seem to be the case. Again, all of the stuff that you do, it seems like even the ceremonies you do, it's an attempt to find the trauma, right? So then you can beat it. No, right? But you have to find it first.
No, it's about integration.
Okay. I've never seen you integrate. Maybe I don't understand it.
I'm doing it on a daily basis.
Okay.
It is the crying it's the crying in the middle of the night and fully feeling the effects of, I am in so much fucking pain that I want to, I want to scream and yell at you, and I want to make it your fault, and feeling it and getting to the place of, okay, this is a part of me, and loving it. Like, that's what I'm doing when I cry in the middle of the night. I am feeling this piece of this part of me that I said, this can't be part of me. I am loving it. And in loving that, there's usually cathartic crying, and it's saying, you're allowed to be here too. It's that, yesterday we had a disagreement that brought a ton of old pain to the surface, and listening to, what I listened to in the middle of the night, and just allowing myself to feel it and experience it and let it be there is my way of integrating.
Okay. Did the alcoholism just kind of, so I know this happens in other cases, but I'm just trying to noodle things out here. Mm-hmm. Did it kind of stunt your growth?
Yes.
So and I know it's not alcoholism, like
the family disease of dysfunction.
Yeah. Okay,
the dysfunctional environment that I grew up in. Yes.
Because it seems like you've had at least 4 or 5 years of this happening.
Yeah.
Right? Is that about accurate?
I would say it took me quite a long time to get to the place where I kind of understood what was happening and could be conscious about it.
Okay.
It was like I was stumbling around in the dark, trying different things. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But now I have a better idea of, okay, this is coming to the surface. And it took me a long time to have any sort of compassion for it. Mm-hmm. Like I was still trying to push it away. And I feel like I have a lot more tools to be able to hold it with compassion and love and say, okay, you're welcome to. Because I think it probably took me a good 3 years to get to the place of, okay, I think I can hold this with some love.
Yeah, see, I think we talk about this stuff, but I just kept, so maybe I just forget it, or I get annoyed. I can just get annoyed with it. But I try to map it along my own development trajectory. Like, I wonder if we had the ability to look at both of our lives at the same time, like we're 18 at different times, right? Different years, obviously, but if we both look at our
if we had a timeline that started with birth, and
then there might be something around our respective 18, 19 years old where there was a spiritual crisis, and then it was dealt with in 2 very different ways.
I think your spiritual crisis happened at 18, 19. Mine didn't happen until 33.
Why were you put on the drugs then? I think that's my point. It's like,
oh,
I think you had a spiritual crisis of some kind. The diagnosis was to put you on drugs.
okay.
Right.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
So
Is
mine would have said, okay, now I gotcha. So, because I was put on drugs starting at 16. And so,
So I wonder if we need a time machine to prove this out, but like, what if the spiritual crises were similar, right? There's, relative to man and woman, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, girls develop earlier, so you had your crash earlier. So good for you.
Now that I understand what you're saying, yes.
Yeah. So nobody ever put me on drugs.
Right.
I kind of dealt with it, and that was like about the time.
And we're talking about psychiatric meds, just to clarify.
Right. I never got into. I think I started smoking weed around then, and then quit and stuff, but it wasn't very good. Wasn't great. Like, I wasn't on psychiatric meds. Like, I smoked a little weed, but that was about it. But it was right about the time where I was in South Dakota, and like different environments, different upbringing. Like, there was never any mention of putting me on psychedelics or psychiatrics. Psychedelics might have helped, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, I just kind of survived on my own and muddled through. I guess you'd say like my 20s were just a giant clusterfuck,
right?
Of making mistakes and failing a lot. And I look back on that as like the worst decade of my life. And right at the end of that, we met.
Yeah.
And so I had a good decade.
Yeah.
Where I was just a fucking mess of a human being. And probably normal for that age, but
I think it's interesting because my 20s were largely a very productive period of my life. Granted, at least half of it I was on pharmaceutical amphetamines, and so like it made me very productive. I was, I owned my own home by the time I was, fairly young. I had a high-powered position in a company. Might have been a dysfunctional company, but it was still a high. It's like, but
in a dysfunctional position,
but
still.
But it was.
You were very happy with it,
right? And so my 20s were very successful, and I didn't. But my 30s have been complete clusterfuck. I mean, it's been an absolute.
You're not even out of it yet.
Right. I'm 39. I just turned 39, and I've, my 30s have been an absolute and complete clusterfuck of trying one thing and failing, and trying another thing and failing. Now I think I've gotten better at trying things and failing. Maybe it takes me a longer time to admit that it's a failure than is necessarily.
I like the weeds that we've gone into, but my original point with starting this thread was, if we look at this as like, let's ballpark it a 10-year process of development, of human development, of going through those emotional up and downs and like regulating towards that. And you can map it out. Like in my 20s, I was real up and down, like it was super duper spiky. Like it was this shit. Towards the closer I get to 30, the more it kind of levels out. And then now in my 40s, fuck, I'm old.
42.
Right. So in my 30s, it really leveled out. And now in my 40s, I'm basically flatlined. I mean, that doesn't mean that I never get happy or never get sad. It's just I'm so much better at detaching from those emotions, right? Because I've had so much practice at it. So what we started talking about is like, how much time has it been, right? And I think you ballparked it like 3 years, right? What I'm mapping out here is like, you've been off the psychiatric meds.
It'll be 4 years.
Well, but there was a year of turmoil or whatever. Like, I mean, all I'm trying to do is map out my 20s, which was about 10 years of that kind of development, right? And if we say that you just started yours around 33, right? That's not very long.
Yeah.
If you say like, there was a year of getting off the drugs. There was some turmoil, right? It didn't really start
till 35, probably.
Okay, fine. So you see what I'm going at? Like, so maybe that's 3 years.
Yeah.
So you had a bunch of years that were kind of taken away from you because of the crash.
Yeah.
You had the years that were way before that, between like 20 and 30, which were kind of muted.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of fucked you up. Like set the stage for the disaster about to happen. and then you had the years where you crashed, and then now you're just kind of coming out of it.
Right.
So what I think of in this thing is like, oh my God, it's another fucking, therapy thing, or it's another session, it's another, container or whatever. What I keep forgetting is like, it might be another 8 years.
Possibly.
Right? But 5, 7 years, like you don't really know, but it's probably not going to be next month.
No.
Right? It's probably going to be another 5 years at least.
Possibly. I don't know.
I mean, it depends on like if you started out with the zigzaggy, right, and then you're just kind of working towards getting to that, like.
Well, and I think there's also another element of
I think
this.
It all leads to sovereignty.
Yeah, so. I think there's another element of this is that part of what I'm doing is also, to the best of my ability, figuring out, it's like trying to map out what I've done and helping other people through the process as I go, and so
well, you teach what you know, man.
Right. And so, there's someone that I support who, is going through is in a very similar place to where I was 5 years ago.
Did you say she's spiky?
Oh yeah, I mean she's
up and down.
Like I mean, and she's in.
She's up and down and backwards.
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely no judgment. Like, but I can sit with her in that because I know what she's experiencing. Like, and that's a tremendous and beautiful gift. Like that I can sit with her in that, and figuring out. So like when people come to this point of saying, oh wait, I don't want to be taking these psychiatric meds. Okay, here's the things that we can do to help you get through this process faster than I did.
Yeah. I don't know if it's about speed necessarily. Sometimes it's about time.
Yeah, but or get through it with less excruciating pain as I did.
Yeah. Sure, there you go.
Like,
are the people you're supporting? I wonder if we can map this out as a term. Like the 20s.
Yeah.
You have the terrible twos, then you have adulthood, growing up, or whatever you want to call it. I wonder how many people out there are in a similar situation where their growth is basically stunted by something.
Well,
right? We see it in AA all the time.
You referred to yesterday that that sometimes it can be frustrating to be married to someone who is a child.
I believe the term that I used was contains childlike attributes.
Contains childlike attributes. I might have heard that as you're a fucking child. Like that was the noise.
I tried. I was trying to complain about what we're talking about. Yeah. Right. To not to be too serious here, but like, there's a certain amount. Like, if I've already done the work, right. And this might hurt to say, I was prefacing it, but like the statement I was going after there was like, if I've already done the work and I'm sitting here like 42, maybe had a bit of a panic moment of my looking at my life, kind of a midlife kind of thing. Well, what am I leaving on this world? Looking at a person who we now find out is like maybe got another 5 years of going through this shit before we're back to two adults adulting in an adult relationship. Like I'm going to be up towards 50 by the time that happens. Right. And like if I get ripped tomorrow and I leave you, I might have a chance. And somehow getting ripped has something to do with that.
And there is an assumption in that there aren't still some childlike qualities in you. That at times come out.
Okay, are you deflecting? Trying to make this about me.
I think there is a part of me that hears that as there's nothing valuable about that. Here's that as you've contributed nothing valuable to my life.
Okay, fair. Do you think that's true?
No.
Okay, then is that noise or is that signal?
Then that would probably be
like a third category of something that was noise, or you took the entire message and turned it into something else. Or whatever that third classification would be.
Yeah, it's
inference.
Yeah, hearing something through my wounded perception.
Okay.
Um,
So okay, so I've expressed a fear of my own
Mhm.
that my life is not going to be what I want it to be, and I told you that, and I think we worked through it to some degree. Yeah. Do you feel like you've contributed nothing to my life?
no.
Okay. So is that statement true then?
Um, no, but there is maybe a natural human desire to hear that from to have that validated by to have that validated.
All right.
Or and maybe that's part of my childlike need to still need validation. I'm still in the I still haven't moved beyond that particular wound.
Okay. Well, the thing I was going to propose here is an experiment that kind of think in terms of if we think about what a sovereign person looks like, and
Mhm.
I would imagine there's confidence in there. Um, uh, what would a sovereign, confident woman named Kira? Uh, what would that person say to this?
um I honestly have no idea.
Okay, can we go into that?
Okay.
Okay, my guess would be that you would know, like you still have that reaction, right? You hear the information, you're like, well, what the fuck, man? Like, you've contributed to my life,
Hmm.
right? So there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And so your sort of sense making apparatus says this person doesn't seem to value my contributions,
Yeah.
and that bothers me. So maybe you could say something about that and say, um, okay, so my thinking is that the message becomes less about you and your wounds and more about me, right? And so you're able to take the signal and the noise and hear the signal and say, this person is trying to tell me something that hurts them, right? And then make it about me,
Yeah.
right? And so if I'm doing the thing that you do, right, I'm giving you a message. Maybe it's not fully formed, right? And I want to be seen,
Hmm.
right? I want that hurt to be seen,
Yeah.
instead of making it about you and your contribution and what you did right and how wrong I am.
Hmm.
Like maybe pull out that signal,
and
but that requires you to kind of be the mountain in that case,
and I think
the tree. Or
I think that I was able to do part of that.
okay,
I was able to hear that you were hurt, but not necessarily. But it took me basically until like 6 o'clock this morning to metabolize all of the noise. Like I was still processed. Like I could hear that, and I think in the past what I would have done was responded quite emotionally violently.
yeah, that's accurate. I kind of like how we've come full circle
Yeah.
on this. Like we started talking about how men don't receive women's message correctly.
Yeah.
Right. And now
we're talking about how women don't necessarily receive men's message correctly either.
And I think they're two completely different mechanics too.
Yeah.
You're basing it off of hurt and like wounds and trauma, and the miscommunication on the masculine side is because it's just how we're wired.
I think I would propose that
it is a default, I would think.
I think that I would propose that the people who are in that game B space would also refer to that as a trauma as well.
I disagree.
And yeah,
I think what the work that men have to do is kind of, I don't want to say unlearn, but learn a different skill. Right? I think women have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. You have, I think, with talking to me specifically, right, you have to learn a different skill in threat detection.
Yeah.
And you have to know whether or not I'm actually a threat.
Right.
And if I am, right, do something different.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe that's a bad example, but maybe it has more to do with like the trauma that you feel like. Understand that your trauma and the way you see things is not an appropriate response.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you get to the signal.
I think one of the pieces that I help with the women that are my clients with is to parse out, like they're still responding with the sarcastic, remarks, and I may do those some of the time.
The dark sarcasm.
The dark sarcasm, or the criticism of
Sure.
like making an assumption about what the other person is doing. Like, I think I've come a long way in that. I don't think I don't think I've perfected it. I don't think I do it perfectly every time, but I could recognize that yesterday you were expressing hurt, and I was trying to, in a very convoluted way, say, I care about your hurt, and the only thing I'm capable of doing right now is not being a bitch, not being an asshole. Like, and that's me knowing that you're hurt and wanting to do something different. And the only thing I can do right now is to refrain from being a bitch and an asshole.
Yeah.
And that being...
I bet if we took a survey of 20-year-old women, that might be their only option too.
Right.
And I'm just kind of mapping that along maturity lines.
And, actually that was a bit of an example of a situation of the dojo. You said something, it brought everything in me to the surface, and I had to go away and process it and metabolize all of the, just pure adrenaline that was coursing through my system. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of adrenaline going through my system.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah. That I think in the past would have, resulted in me flipping the circuit breakers, or
literally in the house.
I would literally flip the circuit breakers when we first got together to shut off his computer so he'd pay attention to me. Not my finest moment.
We were very healthy people.
We were not healthy people. So yeah, making progress. It still, I think after you and I separated 5 years ago, it took me 1.5 years to get to the place where I could metabolize all of the shit that was in my system, because that was right after I came off the meds. This one, it took me about 15 hours.
Okay.
So, 1.5 years to 15 hours, I'm making progress still.
And you don't have as much in the tank either.
Right.
Like there's not as much backed up.
Right. Yeah. So, but, and maybe in the future, it's like, I can say, here, I hear you're hurt. I gotta take care of what's here before I can do anything.
Mm-hmm. I just kind of came up with an interesting business idea. Be like the emotional dojo.
Well, that's what a lot of the people in these spaces are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mine would have things you could hit.
Right.
Which probably wouldn't work for women. They don't want to.
No, I mean they're
or maybe they do. I don't judge.
I kind of wanted to hit you yesterday.
Okay.
I think
we can 3D print a model of your husband's head and put it on one of those little dudes that you hit.
Yeah.
Right? Put your head on there.
But the interesting thing would have been, what might have.
It could be snarky to the thing too.
And like what would be interesting is like if we had a situation yesterday where you expressed what you expressed, and I had someone and I had another male who was not you, who could receive all of the emotion that was coming up, because it would have helped me move through it if I could have like screamed and yelled.
Yeah.
I had something similar come up on Sunday, I think, or no, on Friday, because today's Sunday, with somebody else. And I went in the car and I like screamed really loud because it was bringing all of that stuff to the surface.
Yeah.
And so, but there is something about, yes, I can go in the car and scream, but there is a part of me that would love to have someone who is masculine hear that.
Yeah. And see you.
Yeah, and see that.
It's a very intimate position to put somebody in.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's very exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that emotional dojo might be the right situation. It's like we've got so many situations of family therapy where you go in and talk about it. And I think what would, like if you had a situation where like you were, you expressed something, and then I could immediately turn and like emotionally vomit on someone else.
I remember the thing I was going to talk about before is the Living with Yourself series.
Yeah.
The embodiment of experience is so important.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're talking about needing a village to help you embody some of these emotions.
And I think that's true.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm
yeah.
not saying that's a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that.
And I think
I don't need to justify.
Yeah. And I think, these containers are trying to, I think the containers are attempting to try and figure out what is the right combination of these things.
Yeah.
And, in some cases it's, yeah.
Oh, this has been real talk on the couch.
Yeah. This has been.
I think before we wouldn't have gotten 5 minutes into something like this without yelling and screaming at each other, throwing breakers. And
yeah, we've come a hell of a long way.
I think the reason I really love that series, Living with Yourself.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that so much, and the basic premise is like if I was miserable in life and I needed a change, I go to this strip mall, this spa place, right? And what they do is they actually clone you, and you come out and I shouldn't have said clone. I'm not telling the story right. Yeah. Sorry. But anyway, suffice to say, Paul Rudd's a clone. But let's say there was me, the unhappy, drudging through life guy. Then there's Brian Clone, and the clone is like super fucking happy, just annoyingly happy, and open to the world. Everybody loves connecting to him and stuff. And it turns out there's nothing changed in the DNA. It's just that the clone hasn't embodied the memories, right? So the clone has same height, same everything, like same age, same memories, all of that, because that's part of the story. They just make it work. So same memories, but hasn't embodied those memories.
And he would know, like, the way that you and I snuggle.
Yeah.
Intellectually. But he wouldn't necessarily be able to, like...
You would feel it.
Yeah, I would know the difference.
You would feel it because the body isn't...
knows.
Yeah, the body has a sort of memory with this kind of stuff. And, like, you can remember how to snuggle someone. But, like, being there and being present, and, like, it's down to, like, how you breathe and all of the signals that are sent through the body and the subliminal stuff. So it's so... go ahead.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things, and one of the things we talked about is one of the problems I think I've always had is I could read something, I could get information and intellectually understand it, but I wasn't going through the process of embodiment to fully embody the things.
Was the Dexedrine preventing you from doing that?
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I think one of the pieces is like you got the introduction. You went to Alateen and stuff like that, and you talked to your dad about all of that stuff.
Yeah.
My dad handed me the big book and said, "Here, read this," and then I never talked to anyone about it again for 20 years.
Okay.
At all. And so, what
does that have to do with embodiment?
That, like, if we go back to, I am somebody who processes information through talking about it. If I never talked to anybody about it, I never got a chance to take that information and embody and integrate it into who I am, because I never talked to anyone about it.
And it wasn't just AA.
Right.
Either.
Yeah. There's other things,
well, just high school stuff.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah. It's like everything was up here, but I didn't have anything down here. And so one of the practices I've been doing for the last, couple
spiritual
months.
breakdown or whatever that was, like instead of just talking about it and embodying it and just being with it, it's like, here's a drug.
Right.
Good luck.
Right. And
that sucks.
So then I get
about that.
because
terrible.
Because it's funny. I mean, they're all you can do is laugh at this point. Like there's all you can do is laugh. But the thing that I am trying to do these days is, okay, body, what do you think needs to happen? Because my body knows what to do.
Right.
But it's like it's also retraining my body. Like when it comes to recovery, my body knows what to do.
Yeah, you're playing a lot of catch up.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
It's like trying to get mind, body, spirit, mind, body all integrated in and on the same page. And often it's body's going this way, mind's going this way, soul's going up that way, and nobody knows what the fuck's going on. And so, of course, when I'm trying to express something, I've got, my mind wanting, different parts of my mind going in different directions, all trying to say this, all wanting to contribute something to the story.
Oh, it's interesting. So you don't have the cohesion.
No, I have very little cohesion.
Yeah, the Hall guy was talking about the cohesion.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Because I so much depended on knowing. I learned at a very early age to look at other people to know what to do. I looked at other people to figure out what the right answer was, to verify, to confirm to me that I had the right answer.
Well, we all do that, right? Social cues, social norms, culture.
Yeah, but I don't think that there was any sense of trusting myself.
So lack of sovereignty.
Yes.
That's interesting. Just sovereignty and culture.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you want the culture to end at some point and the person to begin.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a term for that.
Yeah.
Independence. Like when do you look at culture and realize that something about the culture is bad and you want to do something different?
Right. And
you want to set yourself apart somehow.
Yeah, individuation is the word that is often used. But the thing is that like we have never been able to have the meta conversations about sovereignty, about individuation, about how culture, we just sort of did things on
you love your meta, don't you?
I love my meta.
Yeah. Loves the meta.
I do. We did things based on tradition, and those traditions did a good job of that. But then I think in the last 30, 40 years, we've had a breakdown in those traditions, and now we're intellectually understanding why those traditions were important, because it was like people were, because the 60s and 70s, it was like, well, we don't want to do, the psychedelic revolution, it introduced the idea of fuck all of those traditions. We don't want to be like our parents anymore. And so we had this just absolute breakdown in the 70s and 80s. And now we're kind of going, okay, wait a minute. There was value in that, but let's do it with intention versus it being an unconscious thing that we're just passing down. We're saying, let's bring it out into the light and look at it and say, do we really want to include this in our traditions? Or is this a tradition that we're like, nope, that one's not valuable. I read a book by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I forget what the name of the book was, but he talked about how one of the things that the Black community had to do in order to pull themselves out of the crack crisis was start to reintroduce rites of passage to the young men and women. They would literally like take the young men and put them out in the woods and say, find your way home. And like, because they needed a way to help them do that. And I think the white community, I'll say that, doesn't have those rites of passage I think as a culture,
we
don't
called it winter.
call it winter.
We called it winter.
Yeah, he's from South Dakota. I'm from California.
Survive.
Yeah.
Or don't. Whatever.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But it's, as a culture, we had, we dispensed with those rites of passage, and I think we're now starting to understand why they were valuable. And it goes back, but there's also other pieces, like the part in that video of talking about when you're introducing language to a child, saying this is this is
the spirit embodied as a
yeah
gopher.
The spirit embodied as a gopher.
Yeah.
The spirit embodied as
buffalo.
A remote
Birdie.
control. But a remote control is as much as.
Well, I think they were talking about living things.
Yeah.
I think the point of that story was that you create a baseline where everything comes from the source, the spirit, and like you come from that as well.
Right.
I don't remember the rest of it.
Yeah, but it's so like
differentiation between the other and like you're connected to this, and it just helps people early on ground themselves in what they are, and that makes everything a lot easier.
Because I was never grounded in that. Like I was never. I had never.
They use this like when a child starts saying, "What is that? What is that? What is that? What is that?" The tribe would say that is the spirit embodied as whatever. And so instead of saying, what is this? They would just be like, oh, it's the spirit embodied as, whatever I'm looking at. It's the spirit that created this. And the spirit created me. And then you get your why questions. It was really just seemed like it was just a strategy to get the kids to shut up.
But it does embody, it does help them embody the knowledge that they are part of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably helps parents out too.
Yeah. So
little wins, man.
I mean, so, right now what we're doing and what the meta conversations that they're having in Game B is like, what are the things that we lost from tribal culture, from previous iterations of humanity's civilization? Which ones do we want to use, both from our current and previous ones? What do we actually want to use? What has value, and what do we want to dispense with?
Yeah. What would you dispense with? You had a magic wand.
What would I dispense with?
Yeah.
I think
Drop my letter.
I would dispense with that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I would dispense with education as it is in its current implementation.
Public education.
Yeah. I would probably dispense with the idea. I would dispense not dispense with the idea of the individual, but I would dispense the idea, I would want to see a balance between the individual and the collective, that both are needed, both matter. Mm-hmm. You can't subordinate the individual for the collective, but you can't also say that the collective doesn't matter. And I think that U.S. culture has said individual above all else, and I think that's been valuable. I think we've learned a ton from that, and there is value in considering the collective as well. So you need the yin yang. You need both and.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance, but yeah, I think for me, I would get away with try to something about men's sex drive being bad. I would try to get rid of that.
Oh, I think
a healthy male sex drive is great.
I think
it's fantastic.
I think the same thing could be. I agree with that, and I think the same thing would be said for women. If women have a sex drive, they're considered a slut.
Well, I'll let y'all deal with that. I'm just talking about what I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
you can add that to your list.
Yeah, I'll add that. I'll add that to my list. Well, I think what I would dispense with is the puritanical ideas about sex that we have as a culture.
Yeah, I think that's more accurate.
That's a better way of describing it.
I long for a world where prostitution is legal, but regulated in a wacky way. Like, you have to have a pre-existing healthy relationship before you get to engage in a prostitute. Yeah. Okay. Wacky, right? But like, your partner has to know about it. Like, there has to be those kinds of conditions around it. Because otherwise, if it was just legal today, it would make it too easy for men to just kind of sort of shirk their responsibility to build a healthy relationship.
Like they're currently using porn to do.
Exactly. Yes. Right.
No. Yeah.
Well, no, but I think it's bad.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's like an easy out.
Yeah.
Right. And if you put an actual human body in there, you'll probably get men that are more driven to accomplish financial success. Because I mean, like, I really like doing this, and I want to make more money so I can do it more. Yeah. Right. Because right now it's like $20 for a Pornhub membership. Like, there's no pressure there. Right. But like, that's the thing that I would like, puritanical about sex. I think that would be a great idea. Yeah. I think you do more poly stuff, and like, it would just kind of open up a little bit more. But I think the central theme there is like, you couldn't really get away with doing that unless you also brought in something that was like, in order to engage in these things, it's better for you if you have a healthy relationship. Yeah. Hard to regulate that with law. Right. But like, it's just going to be better for you. Yeah. So it's like, you have to have a permission slip for your wife. It's like, here's my $1,000 for the night, and here's my permission slip. I give my husband permission to do you. Have fun. But I mean, if you're not maybe you enjoy it. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, it's but I like the idea of like dispensing with the puritanical ideas about sex. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Christians would argue that takes away from the specialness of it. And I don't think I'm trying to take away from that. I think the idea is like, just kind of open things up a little bit more, and I think it would help, anti-slut things. Mm-hmm. Women can be whatever the fuck they want. They wouldn't get labeled as a slut or whatever. And then you'd also have maybe more compassion for men who are caught in bad situations. Like, I do agree that a lot of men do have traumas that they can't get over, and that definitely affects their ability to have relationships with their preferred partners. Men dating men are still going to have the same problems. If you open that up a little bit more, had a little bit more compassion for those guys, instead of like demonizing them as cis white males and like, oh, you're terrible people. Yeah, I think it's the same as slut shaming. Right. It's just coming from a different place. Yeah. Well, it's taking ideas of like, it's taking what are good ideas of like multiculturalism and feminism and a lot of the isms, and putting the game A type mentality on them. It's like people coming out of, I think what happened is you've got a bunch of people in the 60s and 70s who did drugs, who did psychedelics, and got, the vision of what the world could be. And then they imparted that information onto their children, who then filtered it, who never had the psychedelic experience, and then filtered never embodied it. So then filtered it through their game A upbringing. I see what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, we've gone in totally different directions, totally random, wacky directions with this, but it's been really fascinating. Yeah, they were bringing this up in that video where it's like, you have the experience, you embody that thing, and then, like on a weekend or something, or you go on a week retreat to Peru and have this psychedelic experience that totally opens your mind, and then you go back to the world, man. It's like, I had this experience coming back from Soul Play or Burning Man. It's like, you have these wonderful experiences, and then you come back to the world, and it's all about paying the fucking bills and the credit card and like, all the game A stuff, the game theory, and who's getting ahead and building your career. Rivalrous versus all rivalrous, right? It's all getting ahead. and little slivers of anti-rivalist stuff, right?
Right.
And you see those, and it reminds me of those other times where like it's just soul crushing to come back to the world into this stuff, even if you embodied it.
Right.
It's like the momentum, man. It's definitely one direction.
Right.
And it's just soul crushing to be in that.
Well, and I think that's the piece that is such an interesting part. Talking about the integration, there's the woman that I work with who she has helped me with a lot of the integration stuff of like figuring out how to take the things that I have learned from the various modalities that I've used, and how do I integrate them into my personality, into what I've learned.
Yeah. So being game B and game A.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough, man.
Yeah.
All right, should we close this out?
I think so. We've
All
gone
right.
in lots of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
This has been awesome.
Sweet. All right, well, that's us from the couch. We don't edit shit. So if you bothered to watch this whole thing, good on you.
Yeah.
Good on. And we will see you in the
Bye.
next episode.